Well, according to the nameplate on this piece of John Deere farm equipment, it was at one time new. It was the latest and greatest in farm technology. John Deere has advanced a long way since then, but sometimes people just like to do things the old way. Sometimes for fun, sometimes for the historicity of it. And I discovered just yesterday that a man that I've known for a couple of years now owns his own farm, and once a year he gets out all his old equipment and he harvests his field the way they would have done it about 75 to 100 years ago. So I joined up with him today, and I hope you'll join up with me today. I'm Brian Johnson, and this is Nobody You Know. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Nobody You Know. I'm on the northern outskirts of Redmond at the Lazy M Ranch with owner Mike McIntosh for what you have described to me, which I just discovered yesterday, is a threshing bee. What exactly is going on today?
So a threshing bee is what they would call it. So back in the day when every little farmer had 40 acres, they would have 4 or 5 acres of oats. And so there was a local family that would have had a thresh machine like this one, and a steam engine most likely, okay. And they would have traveled the neighborhood, but all the neighbors came, and the women cooked a big meal at noontime, and so we're kind of mimicking that. I mean, all more than just neighbors are here today, but that's the neighborhood. Just put your grain up, and then they travel to the next little farm, and they put that grain up, and they travel to the next little farm, and so that act of putting it up and all the people showing up was actually called the threshing bee.
But we're just doing the one field today, right?
Yeah, but it's all my stuff. I've been collecting it. I had 2 amazing old mentors, Ray Guthrie from Prineville and Everett Metzentine from Ty Valley. And the thresh machine was Everett's, and my binder was Ray Guthrie's. And so they were here 20 years ago before they passed on and helped me get this thing going. And it was fun for them to see this old machinery work again. My thresh machine's over 100 years old. Binder was probably built in the 30s, maybe even up in the 40s. They quit making them after the Second World War. So anyway, it's old stuff. We work on it for a day or two, then we use it for half a day, then we work on it for a day or two, and then we use it for half a day.
All right, let's go ahead then through the process. You're threshing oats today, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, and this is an oat...
This is an oat stock.
Stock.
This was 1 seed worth. So when I drill oats the first weekend in May, and drill is the planting process. And so out here we have an oat field, and we plow it, disc it, harrow it down flat, and then there's a drill that puts the seed about 1 inch to 1.5 inches under the ground. And so they're in rows. And so to drill 1.5 acres or 2 acres maybe out there, I used 300 pounds of seed. And so you can see how it returns, 20-fold. Every one of these is a seed. The machine does exactly that. Strips the oats seeds from the stalk.
Well, even before we get to that, then, what am I getting here?
So that's an oat. There's an oat seed inside that.
Okay, so what just blew away? Is
that
chaff?
That's called an awn. That's the chaff.
Okay.
Yep.
And is this like when I cook up Quaker oats in the morning?
Same
is this
stuff.
Okay?
Yeah, Quaker oats is rolled.
Right.
They put it through a machine so it flattens it. So drop that one back in there. So the machine separates the stalk. So I don't know if you can see the machine, but the straw is blowing out. And then on this side, in those gunny sacks, comes the seeds. And so inside that machine, basically, it does a little of this, rubbing back and forth. And then there's a fan that blows the chaff away. And what you're left with are the seeds.
Huh.
And that's all a threshing machine does. And back in the day, there was a threshing floor. Biblical days, there was a threshing floor.
Yeah. And
they would have people walking on this much of it. And then they would blow the chaff away and scoop up the grain. And so, yeah, that's all there is to a machine. But that was 1 seed when I planted it. And I get roughly 20 seeds from every stalk when I thresh it. So that's how you obviously gain ground. When in Joseph's day, you stored it all up for the famine. But anyway, that's 1 seed's worth of grain. And so I expect to take about a ton, 2,000 pounds, back to the elevator.
All right, well, let's go through the process real quick.
Okay.
From the beginning. You've planted it. We talked about all that.
Yep.
When I first showed up, you've got 1 machine being pulled by horses with the big fan blades.
Yep. That's called a binder. farm equipment evolved over time, and I think it was because people got tired of walking. So back in the day, there would have been a crew show up and cut all that grain by hand. The women and children would have stacked it, and then somebody would have come and hauled it into something like this. And then they moved to what's called a reaper, and the reaper was a dangerous-looking contraption. You rode along on it, and your horses...
Well, that doesn't look any too friendly.
Oh, no, that's great, though. By comparison, there's no comparison. So the reaper, you sat on the outside of the wheel, and there was these paddles that went around and scooped it off loose, but they came right by your ear, and they went around again, right by your ear. I mean, you kind of had a twitch when you got done. Anyway, and then that evolved into the binder, and the binder is the binder because it cuts it, and it also puts a string around it and makes what is called a bundle. And if you've seen pictures in Thanksgiving Day, magazines where there's this wheat field and there's cute little straw stacks.
Yeah.
Those are called shocks.
Shocks.
And
What's the difference between a shock and a sheaf?
Nothing.
No. Okay.
Nothing. Except for the shock is made of sheaves.
Okay.
Okay? So you're bringing in the sheaves, you're bringing in the shocks of grain. Anyway, so they would bundle them in groups of 5, 1 in the middle and 4 around the outside. And they'd stand them up there and they'd let them dry. So technically I should have cut that last weekend and threshed it this weekend. But because I get a crew one day out of the year, I do it all in the same day. But anyway, so back in the day they'd have cut it, they'd have made these shocks out of the bundles. And so that machine does all of that first part. It makes the bundle, and then he drops them off in groups of 5. Okay? Then you see
then part 2.
And then part 2 is you send a wagon out with a bunch of kids and a team of horses, and they pick up the bundles.
They don't have a fancy machine for that yet.
No. Nope.
It's called children.
Children. Yeah. That's what we had them for. And that's why they had 11 or 12 back in the day, right? And so he'll bring that in, and he'll park it where that wagon is, and they'll pitch it in as well. And so the rest of the process then is the machine does its job. And so as the machine does its job, then you get this sacks and sacks of grain. And back in the day, there's a wagon over there with our grain on it, and they would have hauled that to town and sold it by the sack. And the sacks went from 80 to 100 pounds. And so you just measured it that way.
What happens to the pile of leftover stalks?
So the straw, it's what it's called, straw. I'll bale it today and haul it off.
Okay.
If it were dry, there's enough green in it that it'll probably mold, and I don't want that. So, but anyway, I have to get it off the grass or it kills my grass. So, back in the day, you would have made sure it was dry, and you would have saved it either loose, left it in the stack like that, and fed it to your critters. It's not the nutrient value is 3 or 4%.
Right. Okay.
Most livestock takes 8 or greater. A horse is an 8% animal. If you're milking dairy cows, they're 16 to 20. I mean, they didn't require a lot of protein. So it's just fodder. It's just food. Most of the time, it was used for bedding. So they would put it in the bottom of a stall, and people and animals would sleep on it. If you had a straw tick anything, that's what it was made from. Tick mattress. We have tick collars made out of straw. And so that's the deal with the straw. It's just today to me it's a byproduct. Back in the day, it was all got used.
Yeah.
And so they made bricks out of it. I mean, there was a number of uses for straw that exist today or existed then that may or may not exist in the same way today. So.
And have you Lazy M is M for Macintosh?
It's sort of for Mike. I mean, Lazy Mike. My dad's brand is a 2 and another upside down 2, and that wasn't very romantic. And so when we started putting horses together, and we have a bunch of these ponies. We started gathering them up, and we have a 6 or an 8 horse hitch to go to the fair and everywhere with. We had to have a ranch name. So Lazy Mike sounded like the right thing. It could be Macintosh if you wanted it that way. But yeah, it's the Lazy M. It's registered that way. It's not a business, but that's our registered name. Okay. And anyway.
So you've been a farm type person in one capacity or another your whole life?
The whole time. And so my father is from Wyoming. And a lot of the equipment that we're farming, we cut hay with horses, we do a lot was his equipment in Wyoming. We've hauled it out. And so I've had horses all my life. I've lived here since high school. And before that, we lived in town where the Nazarene Church is now. But anyway, this farming thing gets in your blood, and the horse thing certainly gets in your blood. And then I have just this intrigued passion for old equipment. I mean, I got 3 Model A vehicles and Mom's old 54 tractor and the patent dates on that thresh machine the oldest patent date on the cylinder is 1899, and the newest one is 1913. And so it was probably built after 1913, but not too much after that, probably.
It's pieces of equipment like that it's not necessarily that you do this that's fascinating. It's that somebody somewhere in the past actually figured out all these moving parts and pieces and made it work.
Engineering is amazing, you know, and you'd think that it would be over-engineered, that they're this to be, you know, built really stout. But there are such intricate and fine pieces on that thresh machine that you say that'll never hold up.
Well, I've seen you repairing things probably every 10 minutes out here. And something fell off there.
We fix this stuff. But the beauty is you can fix it, right? Or make a new part. And so that's what we do. And this is just one of the things we do. But it's all good.
All right. Well, thank you for your time. I'll let you get back to it.
All right. We'll
and I'll let you know as soon as it's online.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Brian.
All right. We've been talking with Mike McIntosh at the Lazy M for his threshing bee. If you enjoyed the subject, if you enjoyed the video, make sure you click the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell to make sure you get notifications. And then make sure you let other people know. Make sure you share this video far and wide. Hope you enjoyed the subject, and I hope you'll tune in almost every Tuesday at 6 p.m. I'm Brian Johnson. That was Nobody You Know, only now you do.